Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Hi. Several days ago, I was reading a posting by Rabbi Josh Weinberg, who is a vice president of the URJ and heads up the Israel desk for the Reform movement. Josh's meditation on Jewish life struck a chord with me and deserves sharing here. It seems that the founder of the Shomer HaTzair, the once all-powerful Zionist socialist youth movement, and the man who was the spiritual leader of the kibbutz movement, Yaakov Chazan, once lamented as follows, quote, "We wanted to raise a generation of apikorsim, but instead raised a generation of amei haaretz." Now we have to translate that. Now the origin of the word apikorsim is from the Greek epicurus, and it refers to heretics, in this case, Jews who reject all belief in God. Amei haaretz are Jews who are willfully ignorant of Jewish tradition, willfully ignorant. My teacher and friend, Dr. Tamar Ashkenazi, reminded me today that the first Jews of Amei Haaretz, as referring to Jewish ignoramuses, is in chapter 4 of the book of Ezra. So in modern English, we're going to retranslate, the sentence would be, instead of raising a generation of atheists, we raised a generation of Jews who are Jewishly ignorant. For Jewish socialists, those who built the kibbutz system in Israel, creating a body of Jews who rejected all belief in God was a great thing. It was a desired outcome. You see, religion is a fraud. Apikorsus is a virtue. But being willfully ignorant of Jewish thought and Jewish literature and Jewish tradition for these socialist atheists, that is a tragedy. So, shifting, welcome to our ongoing Torah conversation. Whatever our pattern of beliefs or disbeliefs, we come together each week to push back against the Amei Haaretz in our world, and to push back together, to lift ourselves and those who look to us for inspiration above those who choose not to sample the richness of Jewish tradition. Okay, great, that's the background. So let's begin. Our Sedra is Terumah, Exodus chapter 25, verse 1 and following. The great construction projects are about to begin in the Sinai Desert. Many things. The Menorah, that 7-branch candelabrum in the shape somehow of a tree. The Holy of Holies, the various altars, a special shelving of gold for the showbreads. And of course, there was the Ark of the Covenant, Aron Habrit. Chapter 25, verse 17, you can look at it later, gives us the design features of that Ark, Aron Habrit. It had a lid of pure gold, and the rabbis deduce that the lid of pure gold was 1 cubit thick. What's a cubit? Here to here. That's a lot of gold. And on that lid there were 2 cherubim, also of gold, heavenly creatures of some fantastical kind with 6 wings each. And the 2 cherubim were facing each other. The ark, the box itself, is to be made of acacia wood overlaid with gold, gold on the inside and gold on the outside. And what was to be inside of that Aron Habrit? The 2 tablets of stone upon which were engraved the 10 Commandments. They were to reside within the golden glory that was the Aron, the Holy Ark. Now, you see something coming? We're not going there. I am not going to reference the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark today. Don't ask. We could do that, but we're not going to, maybe next year. So, excuse me, the Chofetz Chaim taught that in some way the Aron HaKodesh was a link, maybe even a portal, between the Olam Hazeh, this world, and the Olam Haba, the world to come. Because the Aron contained the 2 tablets, And the two tablets are the foundation of Torah, and Torah is what allows those living in this world to attain to the world to come. Thus, the Aron connected two parallel universes. What about those cherubim? Rashi quotes the Talmud, which asserts that those otherworldly beings had the faces of children. And this is how we have come to use the word cherub later on to refer to baby angels. But those six-winged cherubim mentioned in our text were powerful figures and not yet those cute little baby angels. And they are to be of one piece with the lid. They were not to be made separately and somehow soldered onto the golden lid, because they weren't ornaments for the lid. They are essential parts of it. Sforno referred to these cherubim as disembodied intelligences who were always yearning to draw closer to God. Whenever a human being would see the cherubim, they were inspired to reach toward the divine. Sforno. And the Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant, what was that all about? Our Sedra here, I'm going to quote, really quite explicit. There I will meet you, and I will impart to you from above the lid, from between the two cherubim that are on top of the Aron HaBrit, all that I will command you concerning the Israelite people. Communications. So was the interior of that gold-covered box intended to remain empty? Nope. Remember, 2 tablets of stone contained therein. And later on, when the original 2 tablets were shattered by Moses during the incident of the golden calf, and then Moses had to go up and get a second set of tablets, the shattered pieces of the first set were kept in the Aron alongside of the complete second set. Great sermons in that particular fact. My friends, the Aron HaBrit was intended to be a communications center, a communications link, a command center between God and our ancestors. Don't push again. I will not reference here Raiders of the Lost Ark. But if you insist, then watch the ending of the movie and compare it to our discussions today. You will learn by seeing the end of that movie that Steven Spielberg was not an Am Haaretz. The Aron here is often compared with the divine chariot described in Ezekiel. When God wanted to communicate with Moses, the Aron functioned like a footstool for the divine presence. God would descend and speak from between the space between the wings of the 2 cherubim. Amazing. There is a public exhibit in Timnah, a little bit north of Eilat in the southern Negev. Timnah, for better and for worse, is often referred to as King Solomon's Mines. Another movie. The exhibit was built by deeply pious Jews, and it's meant to be a replica of the Aron HaBrit, complete with the 2 cherubim and their 6 wings each. A few years ago, I visited that exhibit. I viewed it. It wasn't really made of gold, but it closely fits the description in our text, and I have to admit to you, just between the 2 of us, there was really quite a fascinating experience to be in the presence of that replica. A box of gold, a lid, 2 winged beings on the lid, designed to be a place from which God spoke to Moses. Eventually, it was said to have been placed inside of the temples in Jerusalem. And then it disappeared during the Roman conquest. Is it in a rocky hideaway in central Ethiopia? Some people say yes. Is it perhaps in the catacombs of Rome? Some people say yes. We just don't know. We may never know. So we look for other ways to communicate with God. Other ways. Such as around our Shabbat table, or in our synagogues, or atop isolated mountain peaks in Tibet, or perhaps at the seashore, maybe ideally in my mind, during a violent storm, or in a dense forest with a silence constructed out of a superabundance of noise, sounds. Or we encounter an other and sense in that encounter God's presence. Or maybe we communicate God when we act out of love just because we're moved to do so. Or perhaps we encounter God when we first touch our newborn child, newborn grandchild. Or maybe even when we kiss our spouse or significant other goodnight and feel blessings flow from heart to heart. If we listen carefully then, we can hear the sounds of those cherubs' wings, sounds that the mystics say contain the Word of God. Well, that's it for today. What a day. Have a quiet Shabbat. Listen for that silence that speaks so very clearly. Birds or leaves or waves of love, they all contain God's voice. So quietly now, please hit share. And then have a wonderful weekend. See you next week.